We're here this morning with a Cessna 172. This isn't a normal 172 though. This has got a 3-blader prop, 210 horsepower and 6 cylinders. Alrighty, we're here at Aldinga Aero, just south of Adelaide, with this gorgeous Cessna 172 Hawk XP. It's owned by the Flying Logan Unit Trust. Now, that's called a syndicate here in Australia, but in the US, you know it as a flying club, and they operate a fleet of aircraft. They've got Barons, Cirruses, 182s, and a super cool Carbon Cub, as well as this 172. The plan today is I'm going to show you all around it, all right, and then we're going to take it up for a fly and see how it performs. Make sure you hang around to the end of the video where we're actually going to race this 172 XP against a normal 160 horse 172. Now, we've done a couple of walk around videos in the past that you may have seen. We've done a 337, a Saratoga and a PA28 235. So definitely make sure you go check those out after this video. I'll link them up here. So the full name for this aircraft is an R172K Hawk XP, all right, pretty long name. So typically they're just shortened to the 172 XP. Now the 172 XP, Cessna produced it to bridge the gap between the smaller 172 and the bigger brother, the 182. The way it came about was actually from a US military order. They needed some training aircraft, and the 145 horsepower 0300 Rolls-Royce Continental powered 172s just weren't cutting the mustard. So instead, they put a 210 horsepower in the 172 and turned it into a trainer. Over 541 of these T41 Mezcaleros, as they were called, in essence just a 172 with 210 horsepower, were delivered to the US Army and the US Air Force for use as initial trainers before the pilots got to step up into a jet. Now, the main difference you'll find if you find one of these earlier T41s is they actually put a jettisoning door on, right? So wear parachutes, jettisoning doors, like you'd find on a Cessna Aerobat, which is pretty cool. By the time the 172 XP came along, sales numbers for the 177 Cardinal were dropping, which allowed the XP to slip into that void that the Cardinal left when they ended production. Unfortunately, though, they only produced the XP for 5 years and ended production in 1981. However, they did still produce them in France. They were produced under license by Reims Aircraft. They had the IO 360 still, but it was the full Rolls-Royce Continental 210 horsepower model. It had the coolest name of any aircraft. It was called the Reims Rocket. So to get that extra 15 horsepower, it's just a matter of changing the internal stops in the propeller and modifying the governor settings. What this means is you won't actually see any faster cruise speeds with the increase in power. All it'll really do is help you get off the deck and climb out a lot harder. They did put a time limit on it though. You've got 5 minutes at that full power before you've got to wind it back to the regular max continuous 2600 RPM. So keeping it under that 200 horsepower, that was really important to Cessna because that meant that flight schools could buy it because it was a non-high performance aircraft. Now, the cool thing is you're getting close to Skylane performance for a fraction of the cost, meaning that these are an awesome aircraft to have on floats, and you'll find a lot of them out there with the 210 horsepower STC and floats on the bottom. Alrighty, so from the firewall back, it's just a 172, all right? Strut supported wings, you've got doors on either side with a baggage door at the back. Now this aircraft doesn't have the Cessna standard auxiliary tanks, just got the regular main tanks in it, the 49 gallons usable, but what it does have is an extra 23 gallons from the Flint STC they installed, which adds 2 tanks, 23 gallons, and transfer pumps to send fuel into the main tanks, like you'll see on a number of aircraft, but it isn't that common. What that means is you've actually got to burn the majority, about 2/3 of the fuel out of your main tanks before you can activate the transfer pump to send it into your mains. So what that means is you're going to have been flying for a few hours before you figure out if your transfer pumps are actually working. Now the suggestion is try your transfer pumps early in the flight to make sure that you can actually use your fuel in the extended tanks. Wing-wise, they're just a typical late 70s Cessna 172. You've got the extra fuel drain here for those Flint auxiliary tanks I talked about. Fairly modest 1.6 nautical mile per 1,000 foot glide range, nothing to be upset about. And the cool thing is you've still got the 40 degrees of flap. Now couple that with the 210 horsepower motor up the front and you've got an excellent short field performer. So even baggage door, they're exactly the same as your regular 172s, same amount of storage space and same capacity, weight and size. So the back seat of a Cessna 172 is not actually an uncomfortable place to be. I don't mind it. It's just not so good if you've got two guys my size in the back. But leg room, not too bad. The front seats slide forward so that pilots can actually reach the pedals, and overall, it wouldn't be the worst place to be for a 3-hour leg. Now, the issue is, if you go full tanks, you're probably not going to be able to get someone in the back. With full tanks, they've only got 157 kilogram useful load. And I'll put that in American on the screen for you American guys. But that's actually not real flash. That's about 2 heavy guys in the front, no one in the back, and full tanks. However, it is close to nearly 7 hours of range. So it's just classic Cessna Skyhawk up front with the addition of a couple of things. You've got cow flaps, you've got rudder trim, and you've got a blue prop lever. The other thing you'll find just next to the ignition is a 2-stage electric fuel pump. You've got high and low, and that's in addition to the mechanical fuel pump on the engine. If the mechanical pump fails, you're going to pop the low pump on, which is the yellow side, and a throttle actuated switch will control the fuel flow to the engine in the event that the mechanical pump quits. Now, the Isham STC also comes with a second STC to run a digital tacho. Now, it's accurate to less than 1 RPM. It reads independently off each of the P leads to each magneto. Now, it also compares the RPM drops and gives you additional information when you're doing your run-ups and checking the mags. And as well as that, it also logs the engine time whenever you're above 800 RPM. So when you read the POH for one of these Isham converted 172XPs, you'll find it makes a negligible change to the weight and balance. And the other thing they've done is they've issued no new performance charts for the aircraft. So you're just going to use the regular factory ones as if it had the 195 horsepower, but obviously performance is going to be better. Now, this aircraft has a 28-volt electrical system from factory. The aircraft also has an S-Tech rate-based autopilot. What that means is it's an electrically powered autopilot that runs off the turn coordinator instead of the regular vacuum attitude indicator like you might find on more common autopilots like the Century and the Garmin stuff. What that means is if you lose vacuum power and lose your attitude indicator, you're not going to lose your autopilot. However, if you lose electrical power or your turn coordinator fails, you will definitely lose your autopilot. However, you'll still have your attitude indicator. So just be aware of that. All right, we've just pulled her out the hangar, and I've got to say, doesn't it look gorgeous in the natural sunlight? The guys at Aldinga Aero have done a superb job restoring this aircraft. The exterior and the interior just look immaculate. I think it's time to go flying. The one thing is it taxis just like an normal 172, however the nose is noticeably heavier. Now, I don't know whether that makes the steering more pronounced or not, but I noticed that they do have a 20-litre bottle of water in the back as ballast, and I think that's because of that heavier nose. People aren't used to it when they get in a 172. They assume it's just going to be like any other 172, nice and light, you know, really good control harmony, but in this one, it's the controls are still harmonious, it's just slightly heavier on the nose wheel, that's all.
Aldinga traffic, Yankee Palm taxi to hold point and 2-1 Aldinga.
Alright, so we've got about half tanks today. It's Josh and I on board, and it's about, what is it, 20 degrees out there or something? So we're going to do the same conditions in another 172, see how it compares. But I'm going to call the numbers, rotate 55, climb out VY, and I'll call the 500 foot. It's going to be from a rolling start.
Aldinga traffic, Yankee Palm Cessna lines up and rolls, runway 21 Aldinga.
Up to full power, nice and slow. Oh, she pulls a lot harder than your regular 172. There's our 2800 or just less than. We've got manifold pressure, full fuel flow, airspeed. There's the 55. Wow, she's already wanting to fly. Lower the nose, get through to VY. Beautiful, and up we go. Make it consistent. I'll pull flaps at 100 feet or a track flap. There's 100 feet there. Flaps coming back up, holding VY. I'll leave her at full power until we get to 500 AGL. 200. Pulling about 1,000 feet a minute. That's quite impressive for a 172. 400 AGL. Still hauling 900 feet a minute. And there we go, right there, that's 500 foot. Alrighty, I'll look after the engine now. I'll bring it back to a max continuous of 2600. And we'll compare our 160 horsepower. Oh, there's rolling.
And there's 500 feet. Now, one of the cool things about this XP model, it's actually got a higher demonstrator crosswind component than your regular 172s. The max demonstrator crosswind in it is 20 knots. Now, a Baron is only 22 knots, so for this one to have 20 knots, that's quite impressive. One thing about these 6-cylinder Continental 360s is just how smooth they run. It's injected, you've got a better spread of fuel between the cylinders, and just that 6-cylinder as well, there's just more mass to counter any vibrations, and they just purr along beautifully, not to mention how much faster it's going than a regular 172. We're sitting on 115 indicated at a fairly modest 24, maybe 75% power setting. I'm going to go ahead and close the cow flaps now because we can do that. Trims are set. I've got it trimmed out and it just flies beautifully. Engine smooth as silk. You can fly hands off, it's just purring along, it's fast. Now, despite the extra horsepower, as I said on the ground, that 15 horsepower just gives you a few more ponies to get up off the deck. It doesn't actually give you anything in cruise. You can't use that extra 200 horsepower for more than 5 minutes, so it's really only good for takeoff. What that means is this aircraft isn't a speed demon. It's got the 3-blade prop, you know the old saying, 3 for show, 2 for go. This one's got a 3-blader on it. So whilst the cruise speed is impressive for a 172, it's not as fast as a Skylane like some people say. A quick tour of the cockpit. We'll start down here. Regular fuel pedestal. The fuel's on both at the moment. Then moving up underneath the hand mic cable, we've got our rudder trim set slightly right. Now it is rudder heavy on takeoff and in climb, as you'd expect. It's a fairly powerful engine and prop. Moving up, you've got cow flaps, alright, which I'm going to close. Okay, just because we can. Alright, you've got your regular elevator trim. Alright, controls for your slave compass there. A couple of circuit breakers. Moving up then, instrument panel brightness, alternate static, throttle propeller, which is very unique, mixture, regular Cessna flap control, regular air controls over here, glove box. Over on the right hand side here in front of Josh, this is where you've got those Flint STC tank controls. So unfortunately the actual gauges for them are unserviceable, yet the tanks and pump still works. When you actually select the tank to transfer into the main, you'll see the light come on. See that there? Alright, so that left pump is now transferring into the main, which is okay because we've got lower mains. Alright, you can do that from either. We've got an EDM here, so you can lean it out accurately. A second attitude indicator, because this aircraft is IFR. Secondary attitude indicator, we've got a voltmeter here, suction gauge. Moving across IFR instruments, we've got a Garmin com there. We've got the beautiful Garmin 650 just above it. Really good touchscreen GPS. They're fantastic for IFR. They're the smaller brother of the 750. The 750 is better, but for the size and price of the 650, they're about $10,000 US cheaper than the 750. They are an excellent purchase. Garmin com panel, digital tacho, which I've spoken about, regular 6-pack with an HSI, an ADF. Then we've got the S-Tech autopilot down here, which I'm not using on today's flight, but I have used previously and it works very well. A secondary ILS there, or CDI. Engine gauges over here, unique to a 172, more similar to a 182, is your manifold pressure and your fuel flow gauges. Regular Cessna engine gauges there, and then of course they've added in this 2-stage switch here for your electric fuel pump. So this aircraft's fully maintained by Aldinga Aero. They're on the field down at obviously Aldinga, which is Yankee Alpha Delta Golf if you're going to look it up. And they do such a good job, and this aircraft's just a representation of some of their work. The burgundy exterior, the really nice paint job, and this burgundy interior I absolutely love. It looks like you're getting into an old hot rod, which is pretty appropriate given the era of the aircraft. The avionics are schmick, everything works in the plane, and it's just a really good advertisement for the sort of work they do here at Aldinga Aero. Look, if you've got a GA aircraft, you really can't go wrong with them. If you want to come down to the Southern Vales, this southern area, about 45-minute drive south of Adelaide, make a holiday of it, drop your aircraft in for a service. Their prices are very reasonable, and the greatest thing about them is just how knowledgeable their engineers are, particularly their head engineer, James. So he's been in the industry for absolutely decades. He'll hate me saying that, it'll make him sound very old. But yeah, he's been in the industry for decades, and if there's an aircraft he doesn't know that you bring to him, which I'd be surprised if you did, he will go home and research the hell out of it and come back to you an expert on it before he starts working on it. So you can be rest assured you've got the best engineers working on your aircraft if you take your planes to Aldinga Aero. Now I'll link their website just here on the screen.
So there you have it, the Cessna 172 XP. What a unique and cool aircraft. It was amazing to fly. I really enjoyed it. I want to say a massive thanks to our sponsors, Aldinga Aero and Command Flight Training, and also a massive thanks to Ron and Jan for letting us use their aircraft as part of the Flying Logan Syndicate. It was absolute beauty. Alright, if you missed any parts of the video or you want to recap, there's going to be timestamps down below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and also comment, tell us, if you're not going to buy an XP, what would you buy? 182 perhaps? Anyway, if you enjoyed this, make sure to check out our next one. We've got a bunch more cool walk around videos coming up.